My name is Tim White, and I'm the Chancellor of the University of California, Riverside. You know, I've been blessed to work with Native American communities and students since I really left Berkeley and went to Oregon State University. And when I was there, I was a dean for 4 or so years, and then the provost and the president for an acting assignment. And we had a lot of wonderful opportunities to work not only with our native students there, but the communities up in Portland and over in Eastern Oregon and out by the coast. And from there I had the chance to go to Idaho, and likewise we're surrounded by native communities. The two closest to the University of Idaho were the Nez Perce to the south and the Coeur d'Alene to the north. And in all those cases I had a chance to understand the cultural issues around their youth and their youth development, some of the healthcare and economic and social issues that confront communities, native or not, in America. But most importantly, was working with students, potential students at the university, to determine why it is that they were able to leave their homeland to come to a university, and what were some of the barriers that got in the way, either tangible or intangible, from their communities, from lack of knowledge and so forth. And so I felt very good with many of the programs we did to not only get out in the communities in the Northwest, to encourage them to come and visit campus, but then to also establish learning communities and learning centers for Native students, both in Idaho, and there was a longhouse on the Oregon State campus. So when I came to Riverside almost 5 years ago now, one of the great attractions for me was the chance to again be surrounded by wonderful Native communities. And here they're different than the Northwest, but they're the same, in the sense that many students don't have a chance to stay in school long enough to be competitive to go on to a California Community College or a Cal State University or a UC campus or a private school or a for-profit school. I mean, it matters a little bit less where they go. It does matter, I think, to go beyond, however, high school in order to fully fulfill oneself and contribute back to your native community. And so as the Chancellor of UC Riverside, and we have a wonderful advisory council of both elders and not quite yet elders, as well as faculty, Professor Chancellor on our campus, among others, who have a great intellectual and social and interest, as well as for the Native American students and faculty, obviously a heritage as well. And part of my time here was getting out to these tribal communities and meeting with teachers and meeting with the councils and meeting with the students and the families, and we had wonderful conversations. And one of the things I noticed, though, as time went on, we were making progress. We had wonderful success stories of students who left a tribal community and came to the University of California, Riverside. But you could count them in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 handfuls in any given year. We weren't making a real major shift that I dreamt and others dreamt was possible. And as a consequence, as I hosted actually an advisory committee meeting, advisory to me, that brought in tribal members and community members who aren't tribal but who care deeply about the tribes. And we spent the best part of a morning listening to all sorts of perspectives of what was working and what was getting in the way, why were we making progress incrementally but not making a sort of a sea change difference. And as I thought about that, I said, you know, we can keep trying it the same. I said this to myself privately, and one of the things that Professor Chancellor and others told me was that after listening to this conversation, that I was to report back what I heard, which made me pay very close attention. And as any good student, when I need to pay close attention, I write things down. And that's the way I learn. I rarely go back to my notes, but just the act of writing them down somehow is the way I grasp the details as well as the big patterns. So maybe that's just a little teacher in me saying something like that. And so when it came time to summarize what I had heard, I was thinking about what to summarize, but I was always thinking about, if we keep trying it over and over again the same way, we're going to get the same results, and that is slow, incremental, important progress. Or is there something we can do that reaches the students at an earlier time in a different way in today's world, in this century, in the 21st century, that may be more appropriate to the youth of today. And so the idea of investing $210,000 is really an idea that people much smarter than I will help shape and form precisely how it's going to work. But what I imagined was using the new technologies, the iPhones and the iPads and tweets and Twitters and social media, as well as traditional communication means of face-to-face and in person and through video and in meetings. But also to have, instead of elders and parents and chancellors and professors and teachers talking to our youth, to think about youth talking to youth. And so the idea is, and it'll get expressed much more elegantly than I'm about to say, but the idea is to have somebody in high school who has some experiences to share with the students that are currently in middle school, and deliver to them their advice. So it's much more of a slightly older youth talking to a slightly younger youth, so there's a pure connection there. And then maybe have students that are just about ready to graduate from high school to talk to those who are just getting started in high school, and about all the challenges and the hurdles that they're going to have to jump through and why it matters you stay in school. And then perhaps somebody who's gone off to college somewhere, to UC Riverside or to Cal State San Bernardino or to Stanford, to come back as an early college student and then speak to the juniors and seniors in high school. And when I say speak, it's not necessarily speak, but it's with social media to communicate with these youth is about, hey, listen, if you make that jump, you know, I was scared, but then when I got to the other side, I realized I was well prepared, and boy, have I blossomed. And I guess the final thing to say is and professors don't like to hear me say this, but you know, you go to college somewhere, a community college or a Cal State or a UC, and you're a student in history or in chemistry. You know, the curriculum is around the ABCs, if you will, the lower level to higher level courses that end up making you a historian or a chemist. And that's very important. But the truth is, the knowledge, while being important, is only a part of the story. The other part of the story is you get to learn about yourself. You get to learn about setting a goal, being incredibly challenged in ways you can never even imagine, but then being supported to succeed. And that process then gives you a skill set that only a university or college can provide. And later in life, you're going to get challenged in ways you could never imagine. And now you will know that when given a very tough intellectual problem or a tough social problem, you have the skill sets to work your way through that. The process of education is as equally important as the particular area in which you study: business, chemistry, history, English, Native American cultures, whatever the area of study is important. But that process, and I think that is very important. And then the other thing is, if you go back to your native community with a college degree, you have been exposed now to many different other races, ethnicities, cultures from around the world. And for Native communities to flourish, just like any community to flourish, you must have an awareness of the differences and the similarities that go across the world's cultures, races, belief systems, social systems, political systems. And so when you're doing business in a native business and you're trying to do business with another country, if you have insights into that culture, you're going to be more successful. And I guess the final thing is, one of the unfortunate realities of our lives everywhere is violence. And violence comes for a whole bunch of reasons. It can come from just being a bad person, or it can come from a gap in education between the haves and the have-nots, or a gap in money between the haves and the have-nots. When you have an education, I think you have much more insight into other people's, and while they may seem different when you first meet them, when you get a chance to study with them and eat a meal with them and perhaps work out in the gym with them, perhaps live in the same residence hall or the same apartment building, you find out there's much more in common that bind us together as human beings than there are differences that try and push us apart. In a university and college experience, beyond the ABCs of what you study, beyond the process of learning academic material, beyond the realities of papers and exams and projects, and beyond the realities of, always being hungry and not having quite enough money to feed yourself as well as you would like. It's understanding the commonalities that bind humanity together. And I believe so strongly that education is the way in which we will minimize the opportunities for violence going forward in a local community, in a region of a state or a country or between countries. That's why I'm such a believer in the youth, the Native American youth. That's why I committed $210,000 in order to have UCR and the brilliance of its faculty and its students and its staff to help create and work with the Native communities to try and get more Native students going on well through high school and into some sort of post-secondary education, because I believe in you, I believe in education, and I believe, and I'm very bullish really, on our future, but we can't sit still. We have to work for it in order to get it.